Discover how a shy janitor's routine clean exposed an incredible childhood drawing that changed Charlie's life forever. Charlie was used to being invisible. The world of academia bustling around him at the prestigious university often felt like a vibrant painting, a masterpiece he could only admire from the shadows. Each day, he donned his janitorial uniform, its fabric a reminder of the life he had settled for. While professors and students engaged in animated conversations, he quietly swept, choosing to perfect each stroke rather than interrupt their debates. Yet, between the hum of conversations and the whisper of falling bristles against the floor, he wrestled with a painful truth: he was trapped inside a life of quiet servitude, layered with dreams that had slipped away, dreams of being an artist. As the day wore on and the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows through the crumbling university buildings, Charlie approached a storage room he had passed 100 times before. This time, compelled by an unseen force, he pushed the door open. Dust danced in the sunlight, settling on forgotten relics of the past. While sorting through the clutter, his eyes caught a glimmer beneath a stack of outdated journals. He leaned forward, heart racing, as he brushed off the dust, revealing an old portfolio. Cautiously, he opened it, revealing a treasure trove of vibrant childhood drawings. Each colorful stroke reignited memories he thought had dimmed forever, scenes of whimsical landscapes, wild characters leaping from the pages, and that familiar portrait of a family gathering where a respected artist stood proudly amongst them. The realization struck him like a bolt of lightning: this artist had once been his mentor, championing his fledgling talent before life hijacked his aspirations. How had he let those dreams fade so entirely? An internal struggle surged within Charlie. The past collided with the present, a torrent of nostalgia blending shame with renewed hope. Could he truly reclaim a gift so long forsaken? Would he be mere folklore among those who had turned their backs on him? The professors who debated were beyond reach, or so he thought. One of them, the esteemed art professor, had casually glanced at his sketches during a routine cleanup, and in that moment, a spark of interest ignited. But was it genuine encouragement or just a fleeting impression? The weight of his uniform clung to him, a constant reminder of how society had labeled him. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Charlie stood in the dim light of the storage room, the thoughts spiraled inward. What if he dared to step into that world of critique and appreciation? Could he confront those who had overlooked him for years? The idea was exhilarating yet paralyzing, and with each flicker of hope came fears that ensnared him tighter. The applause of recognition seemed distant, even mocking. Every brushstroke he envisioned felt burdened by years of skepticism. Would his work simply serve as a reminder of his insignificance, or could it shatter the walls he had built around himself? His heart raced as the echoes of ignored potential clawed at his resolve. He had glimpsed a world beneath skin and fabric, an artist long buried. Yet who was he, alone in the tangled web of aspiration and reality? As Charlie clutched the portfolio to his chest, he teetered on the precipice between discovering his true self and retreating into the shadows of his janitorial duties. Would he dare to claim the canvas of his life, or would he remain a ghost, haunting the corners of an institution built on prestige and judgment? Charlie stood in the cluttered storage room, clutching the portfolio to his chest like a lifeline. Dust motes floated around him, illuminated by shafts of sunlight that felt warmer than ever, cradling his secret hope. The sketches pulsed in his mind, igniting a fire that had long been extinguished. This flickering flame urged him to confront a compelling question that loomed larger than the universe of art: what did it mean to truly reclaim one's identity? He straightened up, forcing his shoulders back and inhaling deeply, as if summoning courage from the very air that filled the room. The instinctive desire to create buried beneath years of routine and expectations pressured him to act. Flicking through the drawings, vivid colors exploded into his consciousness, filling him with a sense of urgency. Hadn't he once believed that art could speak louder than any spoken word, that his creativity had the power to defy the confines imposed upon him? The familiar faces from his childhood sketches danced before his eyes, smiling with encouragement, yet their warmth felt distant. Charlie held the old drawings like a bridge to his past, a past that felt like both home and exile. His resolve teetered. Could he navigate the choppy waters between his former aspirations and the suffocating present? The thought of exposing his vulnerable self to scrutiny held a tremor of fear, yet the pull of creative expression felt like a calling, a magnetic force demanding he act. Outside, the cacophony of student life surged, whispers of intellectual pursuits swirling in the air. He surged with the impulse to break free from the chains of his uniform and unleash the dormant artist within him. Yet shadows of doubt lurked. What if his art was deemed unworthy? What if the professors who once championed him now labeled him a mere janitor, a symbol of mediocrity? With trembling fingers, he pressed the portfolio against the bare wooden table. It suggested an action he had long avoided, a leap into artistic obscurity that would either revive him or bury him deeper in silence. His mind raced, scanning for memories of the esteemed art professor who had glanced at his work with something akin to kinship. Inspecting every corner of his mind, he wrestled with conflicting narratives of validation and rejection. If his sketches had made a fleeting impression on the professor, did that hint at a path forward? Trusting in sparks of interest could lead to bright new avenues or pitiful embarrassment. Charlie stepped away from the clutter, determination gradually replacing timidity. He needed more than a casual inquiry, he needed purpose. Macmillan University was not just a backdrop, it was where he could carve out a tangible existence as an artist. He pictured himself approaching that professor, portfolio in hand, heart racing yet brave. This was not just about showcasing his work, it was a confrontation with the very assumptions that saw him as a mere bystander. As he walked out of the storage room, Charlie felt a shift, like the shift of tectonic plates awakening dormant potential within him. The familiar hallways, once a veil of intimidation, now seemed to vibrate with possibility. At that moment, he sensed that his life could slowly revolve around choices that honored his true passions. With each deliberate step, Charlie faced a new horizon of uncertainty and growth. The artist in him stirred and whispered promises of endless exploration, connections waiting to be made through canvas and color. Yet, a seed of anxiety burrowed deep. How would he manage to bridge the gap between his past and the future he yearned for? Charlie stood before the door that led to the busy art department, hesitant yet resolute. It was time to break free from the identity that bound him. With each heartbeat, he leaned into expectant anticipation, whispering his intentions into the air. Would today mark the day he stepped into the world he secretly craved, or would he retreat once more, lingering in the shadows of a life unlived? The moment of truth awaited him just beyond that threshold. Charlie pushed the door open, the weight of his portfolio suddenly feeling like a tangible embodiment of his dreams. The clamor of the art department resonated through the air, where students animatedly discussed their projects, their passions evident in every enthusiastic exchange. As he stepped into the vibrant world he had longed for, the sight both overwhelmed and invigorated him. As he moved deeper into the room, he scanned the bustling environment, noting canvases in various stages of completion and the faint scent of turpentine lingering, a scent he associated with potential, with new beginnings. Yet, the hesitation that had lingered back in the storage room returned to entwine itself around his resolve. He could feel eyes grazing over him. Who was he, a janitor, amidst these budding artists? He took an unsteady breath as his heart drummed in his chest. Before he could second-guess himself, Charlie spotted the office door at the far end of the room, the one belonging to Professor Melrose. The professor had once viewed his work with intrigue, and now, months of indecision coalesced into a singular focus. Should he reveal himself? Determined, Charlie gripped his portfolio tighter. Every step felt monumental, the dim familiarity of anonymity shifting as he approached the door. He raised his knuckles to knock, but a wave of insecurity washed over him, threatening to carry him back into retreat. What if the professor dismissed him? Would he just be a figment of his past, a fleeting shadow instead of the artist he wished to present? Steve, a fervent art student with a brash humor and an unyielding passion, interrupted his thoughts. "Hey, Charlie. Didn't see you in the halls lately. What brings you here?" Caught off guard, Charlie faltered for a moment, mixing surprise with longing for connection. This was the kind of acknowledgement he had craved, an invitation into this vibrant world. He stammered, glancing down at his portfolio. "I thought it was time I shared some of my drawings with Professor Melrose." Steve raised an eyebrow, a hint of surprise flickering across his face. "Really? That's awesome. Go for it," he encouraged, infusing Charlie with a surge of validation. Charlie's heart swelled, a wave of warmth washing over his reservations. But the enthusiasm quickly receded. What if he stumbled over his words? What if he didn't convey the essence of his work to the professor? Taking another breath, he felt the imaginary weight of those old sketches pressing against him. They weren't just paper, they were parts of him, fragments of a forgotten vision that longed to see daylight. Summoning the courage that had ignited within him, Charlie knocked on the door, feeling the sharp edge of anticipation pierce through his fear. "Come in," Professor Melrose called. Charlie turned the handle, opening the door to the office that was cluttered with sketchbooks, paint tubes, and a warm, inviting light. The professor was seated behind his desk, peering at a student's artwork, a glimmer of creativity illuminating his features. "Ah, Charlie. It's good to see you," he said, setting the artwork aside, his eyes gleaming with curiosity. As Charlie stepped over the threshold, the voluminous portfolio felt both grounding and liberating. He realized this moment was not just about unveiling his art, it was a declaration of his identity, a bridge to a world where being a janitor didn't limit who he could become. I have something to show you," Charlie began, each syllable requiring a conscious effort. And as he opened his portfolio, revealing the vibrant sketches that breathed life onto the pages, he felt like he was staring into a long-buried treasure. What he didn't know as he laid those drawings on the desk was not only what he hoped to discover about himself, but also the impact it could have on the professor and on the new path he sought to forge in the artistic realm. But just as the professor took his first impression, an unexpected knock came at the office door. Charlie looked up, startled. Who could be interrupting at this critical moment? Would it wash away the momentum he had mustered? "Come in," Professor Melrose called again, and Charlie braced himself for whatever revelation awaited through that door. The direction of his life. The door swung open, revealing a fellow student, Mia. She was well known in the art department for her vivid use of colors and her keen eye for detail. Charlie felt a pang of envy as she confidently entered. Her demeanor radiated self-assuredness, a stark contrast to the storm of uncertainty churning within him. "Oh, I'm sorry, Professor," Mia exclaimed as she paused upon seeing Charlie's portfolio displayed in front of the professor. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "It's quite all right," Professor Melrose replied, his tone calm and welcoming. Charlie was just sharing some of his work. Mia's gaze flickered from the professor to Charlie, and for a brief moment, Charlie swore he saw recognition in her eyes. "I didn't realize you were working on anything," she said, her voice softening. "I'd love to see." Her encouragement seemed genuine, yet Charlie's insecurities twisted in a new direction. The expectation sat heavy on his chest. What if she judged him? Charlie hesitated, a small part of him wishing he could melt into the floor. Why had he opened his mouth? He stumbled, the words thickening on his tongue. "Give it a shot, Charlie," Professor Melrose urged gently, the corners of his mouth lifting in an understanding smile. "You're here to express yourself." With a quick inhalation, Charlie stole a glance at the professor's eager expression. Somehow, that spark of trust fueled his determination. He summoned a rush of bravery and began to describe his pieces, infusing each word with the kind of emotion he felt as he created them, those experiences not just of drawing, but of living. His voice grew steadier as he explained the first drawing, a whimsical landscape, filled with colors that sang to him and a vivid sense of nostalgia. Charlie saw Mia lean in closer, her art critique instinctively unfolding, a melding of curiosity and admiration crossing her face. "This is beautiful, Charlie," she commented, her voice floating above the tension that had earlier filled the room. "Your sense of perspective is unique." The compliment crashed over him like a wave, dissolving some of the doubt that had lingered. He continued to articulate the stories behind each sketch, slowly unwinding the cocoon of his hesitance. Charlie realized how important these details were, how each element revealed not just technical skill, but pieces of himself, experiences that had molded who he was and aspired to be. As he reached the last page, silence enveloped the room. It felt almost sacred. Charlie held his breath, drenched in anticipation. Professor Melrose peered closely at the artworks, the promise of critique hanging in the air. "You have a raw talent," he finally said, eyes bright with appreciation. "Have you considered submitting to the student showcase?" Charlie's heart raced in a flurry of possibility and opportunity he had once thought unreachable now lay directly in front of him. Yet just beneath the excitement, anxiety coiled tightly. Submitting meant stepping deeper into a world that had always felt just out of reach. Could he truly present himself alongside students who had trained for years? "I'll think about it," he said, though the words tasted bittersweet on his tongue. "Take your time, but don't take too long," Professor Melrose added with a wink. "This moment is just the beginning, Charlie. I sense there's a lot more waiting to unfold." Before Charlie could respond, Mia chimed in. "I'd love to collaborate on a mural, if you're interested. Your perspective could really shine alongside mine." Charlie blinked, caught off guard. This wasn't just an opportunity to submit a piece to a showcase, it was an entryway into collaboration and connection. Emboldened yet bewildered, Charlie nodded. "Definitely, let's talk more." As he gathered his portfolio, a mix of exhilaration and trepidation swirled within him. He had taken a significant step toward reclaiming his identity as an artist, and it was only the start. Each moment pushed him closer to unveiling more of himself, prompting exploration into realms he had blurred for too long. But just as he turned to leave the office, a realization struck him hard. Was he ready to truly embrace this new identity, or was he still going to falter when faced with substantial challenges? "Charlie," Professor Melrose called after him, "remember that being an artist is as much about risking your voice as it is about your technique. Don't second-guess yourself." With those words, Charlie felt as though he had stepped onto a precipice, confronting both the thrilling potential of his path and the heart-stopping fear of doubt. He could see the vibrant colors of change within reach, but what lay ahead? The journey was just beginning, and it would demand all of him more than he had ever dared to give. As he exited the office, did he feel ready? Or would he allow the door of opportunity to close once again? As Charlie stepped out of the office, the dimly lit corridor stretched out before him, mirroring the uncertainty that lay ahead. He clutched his portfolio tightly, a protective shield against the shifting tides of his emotions. Every painting felt like an extension of himself, each stroke a whisper of his own struggles and triumphs. Could he allow that vulnerability to be seen by others? The flickering fluorescent lights overhead sent a pang of anxiety through him. He made his way to the common area, each footfall echoing his doubts. There, students were scattered across the tables, chatting and sketching. Mia's earlier enthusiasm echoed in his mind like a heartbeat. The invitation to collaborate lingered. Taking a deep breath, he forced himself to approach a group that included her. "Hey, Mia," he said, trying to inject confidence into his voice. "Do you still want to discuss the mural?" Her face lit up, and Charlie felt a rush of warmth. "Absolutely. I think your perspective could really add depth. How about we meet tomorrow and brainstorm ideas?" "Sure, what time?" "Let's say 4 in the art studio." We can use the big wall in the back. As she beamed at him, a flicker of hope ignited within. Engaging with Mia felt like taking a monumental leap, yet it also reminded him of the chasm of inexperience between them. Would his artistic voice hold up under scrutiny? The next day arrived quickly, a mix of exhilaration tinged with dread thrumming within him. Charlie entered the studio, its vastness both an opportunity and an overwhelming expanse. The walls screamed for color, energy, and creativity, a blank canvas that seemed to mock his hesitations. Mia was already there, sketching on her tablet. They exchanged ideas, with her leading the way, enthusiasm spilling over with every new concept. Yet, he found himself holding back, as if his thoughts were murky and disconnected from the vibrant conversation flowing around him. "Charlie, what do you think about adding some abstract shapes?" Mia proposed, her eyes gleaming. It could symbolize different perspectives coming together. His mind raced. Sure, but he hesitated, struggling to find the right way to voice his doubts. "I wonder if they might clash with the landscape theme I've been thinking about." "Clashing can be beautiful if executed well," she replied, tilting her head, genuinely curious. "Art is about conflict, right? It's about finding balance." With those few words, something resonated within him. Balance. The very essence of conflict. This mural could be a reflection of their artistic journeys, two different styles melding into one larger expression. "Okay, how about this?" he proposed, hope igniting. "What if we create a scene where the abstract shapes emerge from the landscape, showing a transition from the known to the unknown?" Mia looked impressed. "I love that. Let us do it." The collaborative effort breathed life into his drawings, but as they sketched, doubts crept back in. What if Mia regretted choosing him as a partner? What if she decided his ideas were too weak to contribute? The thought hung over him, nearly suffocating. As they worked side by side, he caught her occasionally glancing at his sketches with genuine interest. It propelled him forward, but with each stroke of the pencil, he fought against the urge to retreat into the shadows of insecurity. He wanted this to be a part of him, yet revealing himself to anyone felt terrifying. Weeks passed, and slowly, he found his footing in their artistic alliance. Yet every night, a nagging question would resurface: when would the criticism come? The fear of inadequacy had become an unwelcome companion, frequently gnawing at him. One late evening, after another productive session, Mia threw out an unguarded thought. "You know, Charlie, I think you're really finding your voice. You have so much to say with your art." Her affirmation lit a fire in him, but alongside it, a question blared louder than ever: what if he wasn't able to deliver when it mattered most? The upcoming showcase loomed like a shadow over their mural, and Charlie wrestled with whether he was ready to dive deeper into this world of art. With their mural competing against others in the student showcase, would he surpass the limitations he placed on himself? As the day of presentation drew nearer, Charlie faced the inevitable, the moment he could either embrace his growth or retreat into the familiar safety of doubt. Could he transform his fear into strength? And what if, amid this artistic journey, he unearthed something about himself he never knew existed? With the impending showcase looming, Charlie felt the weight of expectations pressing down on him. Each stroke of the brush on their mural became an exercise in vulnerability and intimidation as he painted alongside Mia, her confidence amplifying his self-doubt. Every color he applied mirrored his internal battle. This was not just art, it was a reflection of his very being. In the evenings, after the brainstorming sessions ended, he would sit in his small apartment, the walls adorned with his work and remnants of his childhood dreams. He stared at his sketchbook but found little inspiration. He was caught in a cycle of self-criticism and paralysis. What if the final mural failed to capture the depth of their collaboration? The voices in his head clamored louder. "You're not good enough," they echoed, drowning out Mia's earlier praise, which felt like a distant whisper. The night before the showcase, unable to sleep, Charlie pulled out the sketchbook from his last year of high school. Flipping through the worn pages, he stumbled upon an old drawing, a whimsical depiction of fantastical landscapes intertwined with memories of joy and freedom. It hit him like a punch in the gut. Here was the essence of his artistic spirit, untamed and unfettered by the adult insecurities that had since engulfed him. He examined the drawing closely, recognizing the raw emotion that he had channeled into every line. It reminded him of a time when art was an escape, not a source of anxiety. In that moment of clarity, a burgeoning resolve took root. What if he infused that childlike wonder into their mural? What if it wasn't about achieving perfection but rather revisiting the joy of creating? He took out a new canvas and began to replicate the essence of that drawing, layering the spontaneous strokes from his youth onto the plan for the mural. Hours slipped by as vibrant colors splashed across the surface. He felt lighter with each stroke as he reclaimed what had been lost along the way. The weight of doubt began to lift, replaced with a burgeoning sense of possibility. The morning of the showcase arrived. Standing before the mural they had created together, Charlie whispered affirmations to himself. They had navigated through artistic difference, and though he might have painted the abstract shapes with uncertainty, he recognized that each element contributed to a greater whole, a tapestry of journeys interwoven into one narrative. As he and Mia stood before an audience of peers, patrons, and judges, Charlie felt a mixture of anticipation and dread. The doubts flared one last time, threatening to resurface, but he silenced them. He understood now that vulnerability was not weakness but a bridge to connection and authenticity. Charlie prepared himself for the inevitable judgment, yet he also imposed a sense of purpose. This was not just about winning, it was an exploration of voice and identity. When the moment finally came to discuss their mural, standing side by side with Mia, he spoke from the heart, no longer hesitating to share the story behind their work and the emotions it embodied. His voice grew steadier as he spoke, fueled by a realization that artistry was about honesty. As the discussions concluded and the audience began to dissolve around them, a sense of accomplishment surged within him. He had taken a significant step toward peeling back the layers of both his fear and his creativity. But just as relief washed over him, Charlie caught an unexpected glance from a figure in the crowd, another student, someone from his past, whose presence brought a flood of apprehension back into focus. The past he thought he had buried suddenly felt alarmingly close. What if that glance wielded the power to unravel all he had fought to achieve? With every ounce of courage he had summoned for the mural, Charlie braced for a confrontation. Wouldn't this moment define not only how he faced his past but how he defined himself moving forward? Charlie's heart pounded as he locked eyes with the figure across the room. Marco, a classmate from high school, had always been the life of the party, the one with a story to tell and a laugh ready to explode. Charlie recalled how Marco had once been friendly but too often critical of anything that fell short of his broader vision. That gaze, penetrating and unyielding, stirred eddies of anxiety within Charlie, making him question everything he had achieved only moments before. He felt the urge to retreat, to hide behind the mural which had become a symbol of triumph, but he steadied himself. This encounter was unavoidable. It was a chance to confront not only Marco but also the reluctance and fear he had carried through their shared past. Charlie, Mia nudged him gently, bringing him back from the spiraling thoughts. "You okay?" "Yeah, just give me a second," he said, forcing a smile while battling the turmoil inside. What would Marco say? Would he dismiss his efforts? The worst-case scenarios played like a relentless movie reel in Charlie's mind. Gathering his resolve, he took a deep breath and walked toward Marco. As he approached, he noticed the subtle shift in Marco's demeanor, a mix of curiosity and something softer, perhaps respect. Charlie reminded himself of the journey he didn't just share with Mia but had forged within himself: courage, honesty, and a reclaimed passion for art. "Charlie," Marco initiated awkwardly when Charlie stood directly in front of him. "I saw the mural. It's impressive. You really poured your heart into it." The words caught Charlie off guard, leaving him momentarily stunned. He had expected critiques, whispers of inadequacies. Instead, Marco acknowledged his hard work. "Thanks," Charlie stammered, grappling with the unexpected compliment. It was a collaboration. Yeah, Marco nodded, then glanced back at the mural before continuing. You always had talent, you know. I didn't realize it could be like this. I guess I underestimated you. The statement planted a seed of confusion in Charlie's mind. Had Marco truly underestimated him, or had Charlie underestimated himself? You did what I never could, Marco said. You embraced it. Your voice isn't just in your art, it's in how you express everything. I admire that. Charlie's internal barriers began to crumble as he stood there, heat flooding his cheeks. Recognition of his craft was more than he had anticipated, even from someone like Marco. Look, I know we didn't see eye to eye in school, but I just want you to know that whatever happened back then is in the past. You've changed. You've grown. And I'm glad to see it. Each word resonated deeply with Charlie, echoing with the self-acceptance he had fought for in his artistic journey. But Charlie started, catching the vulnerability of his past creeping closer to his present. Don't, Marco interrupted gently. We all have our histories. Just keep going. Don't let anyone, especially me, take that away. Charlie felt as though a chain had been broken, released from a burden he hadn't realized he still dragged along. In Marco's unexpected kindness, he found validation and an invitation to continue his growth. As they exchanged a few more pleasantries, Charlie felt the tension drain. Confrontation had transformed into understanding, leaving him emboldened. But beneath this newfound confidence, another question lingered: how would he navigate his artistic journey from here on? What became evident was that this showcase had merely opened the door. The real challenge awaited ahead, one he must navigate alone: a pursuit of identity in art, a discovery that would test not just his talent but his resolve to face the shadows and doubts of his past. The murmur of the crowd faded as he watched Marco blend back into the mass of faces, and Charlie felt hope flaring in his chest. But with this new flame came apprehension. Would the next steps reveal a deeper fear or further affirm his trajectory toward artistic enlightenment? As he turned to share his thoughts with Mia, his mind racing with potential, a whisper of doubt resurfaced. What if he wasn't as ready as he thought? Charlie felt a mix of exhilaration and trepidation vibrating in his chest as he stood with Mia, the hum of the crowd pulling him back to the present moment. She leaned in, her eyes gleaming with encouragement. "What's next for you?" she asked, probing the depths of his burgeoning confidence. "I don't know yet," he replied, each word mingling with vulnerability. "I want to create something more, something that feels true to me." The idea hung in the air between them, electric, yet tinged with uncertainty. Could he truly delve deeper? Eager for direction, Charlie recalled his sketchbook, the refuge where his ideas unfurled. It had been too long since he collaborated with himself, allowing pure emotion to spill onto the pages without fear of judgment. The thought ignited something within, a flicker of inspiration that brewed a storm of creativity he hadn't felt in years. "Let's head back to my place," he said, his voice steadying with resolve. "I need to sketch." Mia nodded, her smile encouraging as they made their way to his apartment. With each step, Charlie felt lighter, buoyed by the prospect of reconnecting with his artistic roots. The moment they entered, the familiar cluttered chaos greeted him: half-finished canvases, a stack of dusty books, and vibrant paints that seemed to wait in hushed anticipation. It was both daunting and comforting, a canvas of his own life sprawled out before him. Settling into his worn-out chair, Charlie opened the sketchbook and held the pencil poised over the first blank page. He inhaled deeply, allowing the sense of paint and old wood to seep into his lungs. As he sketched the first few lines, memories flickered through his mind, guiding him through the essence of what he wanted to express. He envisioned a piece that encapsulated not only triumph but the raw threads of vulnerability that had been a part of him all along. Suddenly, an insistent thought broke the concentration. What if he poured his emotions into a piece and it fell flat? What if it didn't connect with anyone at all? He clenched his jaw, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. Marco's words reverberated in his mind, a reminder that growth often entailed discomfort. With determination, he pushed aside fear, allowing each stroke of the pencil to become a physical manifestation of his inner struggles. Hours slipped by, each line revealing more of himself until, finally, he found a rhythm. It was exhilarating, liberating even, as he felt the boundaries of shame and doubt start to dissolve with each completed sketch. The form of a figure began to emerge, a representation of not just a person, but a struggle, a journey of self-acceptance colliding with external scrutiny. Absorbed in the process, Charlie lost track of time. It was only when the room dimmed that Mia's voice brought him back. "Charlie, you've been at this for hours. What have you created?" Stepping back, he turned his sketchbook towards her, revealing a design that encapsulated his emotional landscape, a juxtaposition of light and dark, monumental yet delicate. He feared her judgment but craved validation all the same. "Wow," she whispered, her eyes widening. "This is incredible. You've captured so much." Heat rose in his cheeks, a blend of pride and disbelief washing over him. Maybe he was ready to step into the light, to finally embrace not just the artist that was recognized but the person who dared to reveal the complexities within. Yet as Mia continued to compliment his work, Charlie felt a new, unsettling thought creep into the corners of his mind. What would happen when he unveiled this piece to the world? Would they see him as he truly was? The stakes felt impossibly high, closer than ever, as if he was standing at the precipice of a great leap. Would he find the courage to continue exploring the depths of his identity or be pulled back by the familiar tendrils of fear? With a final deep breath, Charlie made his decision. He wouldn't let the past dictate the present. But the road ahead still loomed dauntingly in front of him. As he looked at the sketch, a new voice whispered persistently in his ear, what if he took this piece further, something deeper than just expression? Something tangible, something shared? What if, this time, vulnerability became the very bridge to his growth? The realization swept over him, awakening a fresh wave of determination that blended with the trepidation that lingered. The time had come to face not just his recent fears, but the possibility of thriving in a world that demanded honesty and authenticity. The moment of truth lay ahead, waiting fiercely on the horizon. Sitting in the dim light of his apartment, Charlie felt the weight of his artistic aspirations pressing on him like a heavy blanket. The sketches that sprawled across his workspace whispered promises of potential, yet the fear of exposure loomed larger than ever. Mia's praise had ignited a flicker of hope within him, but inspiration and doubt danced together in a relentless tug-of-war. Taking a breath, he turned to the sketchbook again. The figure he had drawn, the embodiment of his inner turmoil, felt incomplete. Each stroke seemed to beckon him toward deeper layers. Could he dig within himself for the raw, unfiltered truth that lay waiting? He craved authenticity but feared vulnerability. The specter of judgment nagged at the edges of his consciousness, whispering cruel reminders of past failures. What did it mean to create something true? The question echoed in the silence of the room. Was it merely a technique, an aesthetic choice, or could it imply exposing the darkest parts of himself? With newfound determination, he picked up his pencil, resolved to approach this sketch as a chance to confront his fears head-on. Charlie focused intently, drawing fluidly, letting the pencil dance across the page. He sketched not just the figure but added elements that symbolized his insecurities, shadows that twisted and contorted behind the figure, mirroring the struggles he faced within his own mind. This was not merely art, it was a form of confession. With each detail that fell to the paper, he began to understand that revealing his vulnerabilities could carve a path toward acceptance rather than rejection. Hours melted into the night, and as he worked, Charlie found himself entranced by the process. He felt the weight of external expectations slowly diminish, replaced by an invigorating sense of honesty. Despite the nagging questions that remained, he no longer hesitated to confront the jagged edges of his emotions. For the first time in years, he felt in control, guiding his artistic expression without interference. Several drafts layered over one another, and each iteration brought clarity, yet with it came a wave of anxiety. What would he say when it came time to share this work? How would he explain the nuanced imagery that reflected not only his journey but also the universal experience of navigating fear and hope? Would people embrace the fragility he portrayed or view it as weakness? Mia's face flashed in his thoughts, her encouraging smile rooted in his mind. He pictured the connections his art could forge, the seeming barriers it could break down between himself and others. The prospect both thrilled and terrified him. In his heart, he knew he needed to share this piece, this encapsulation of his internal struggle, and thus he envisioned this not merely as a drawing but as a conversation starter. What if others could glean strength from his journey? Could vulnerability convert into a bridge, something connecting him to others who felt similarly isolated? With each rhetorical question that flooded his mind, the intensity of his purpose crystallized. Yes, this was a moment of personal authentic expression, but it was also a challenge to reclaim his voice, a chance to reshape his narrative, one that he hoped would inspire others in their own battles. Fingers cramping but heart pounding with resolve, Charlie clasped his pencil tightly and made one final flourish, completing the drawn figure. Stepping back to survey the finished piece, he felt a rush of adrenaline. The sketch was a part of him, a tangible remnant of his fears, his triumphs, and his determination to grow. Yet, as he placed the sketchbook on the table, a fresh wave of uncertainty crashed over him. Would he be brave enough to unveil this piece of his soul? The thought sent a chill down his spine. The road ahead might still be steep, but Charlie sensed this was only the first chapter of a much larger story. With his heart racing, he knew what lay next: a platform to share not just the art, but the emotions behind it. The questions were now more urgent than ever. How would he share it? What would be the first step toward lifting the veil of insecurity? As possibilities collided in his mind, he felt the electricity of potential surge through him. The moment was upon him, and the horizon glimmered with promise, waiting for him to seize it. Would he rise to the occasion? The very thought hung in the air, begging for an answer. Charlie stood in front of the mirror, observing the man he had become. The reflection staring back at him bore the marks of transformation, lines of determination etched into his features, eyes sparkling with newfound confidence. Months ago, he was just a janitor, frayed dreams tucked away under layers of self-doubt. But now, with every brushstroke of paint and conversion of emotion into art, he had begun to define his future. Today marked an important milestone. He was set to unveil his sketch at the annual art showcase. The very thought churned excitement and anxiety in his stomach, but deep down, he knew there was no turning back. Fueled by the strength that had ignited during his collaborative mural project with Mia, Charlie had committed to stepping into the artistic spotlight. Arriving at the entrance of the gallery, he took a moment to ground himself. The vibrant chatter of attendees filled the air, vibrating with the essence of creativity. He felt like a stranger entering a world he had only observed from afar until now. This was the moment he had prepared for. It was time to share his journey with others. He maneuvered through clusters of excited students and patrons, each framed artwork illuminating the walls like windows into the souls of their creators. Charlie's heart raced. He located the space designated for his piece, and there it stood, bold and alive. The title loomed above it, Shadows of Growth. Everyone would soon witness the embodiment of his struggles, triumphs, and vulnerability. Taking a deep breath, he stepped up, ready to address the crowd that began to gather. As the chatter faded and eyes turned toward him, Charlie felt vulnerable but grounded. This was not simply about showcasing a drawing, it was about revealing previously hidden parts of himself. "Thank you all for being here," he began, his voice strong yet laced with tenderness. "Art has always been a vital part of my life, but it took me years to realize that vulnerability is the essence of true creation." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the audience, and he pushed forward. "This piece encapsulates my journey to accept who I am, flaws, fears, and all." With each word, he felt barriers dropping. He spoke of the weight he had carried, the transformative nature of the artistic process, and how Mia's collaboration had rekindled a flame within him. He shared heart-deep stories tied to the sketches, allowing both the light and the shadows to surface. As he unveiled the drawing, gasps filled the space, eyes widened in surprise, and he felt every emotion take flight. The contours depicted a figure surrounded by swirling shapes and shadows, representing his fears, transmuting them into a dynamic tapestry stretching toward the sky. Every line narrating a story, every color signifying emotion. It was Charlie laid bare on the canvas. After the initial shock, applause erupted louder than he had imagined, crashing over him like a wave of warmth. The recognition felt validating. He had achieved more than he thought possible. "You've turned your vulnerabilities into art that resonates," a voice called from the back of the room. Hearing that, Charlie sensed that acceptance had begun to reconcile the past he feared. For too long, he let insecurities define him, but not anymore. In that moment, he understood the enormity of what he had accomplished. Not just as an artist, but as a person daring to embrace authenticity. These connections forged with his audience marked a new beginning where Charlie could cultivate his identity, detached from the roles and titles society imposed on him. Later, as he stood alone in the gallery, mingling with the praises and accolades, the reality of his transformation washed over him. The once invisible janitor had emerged, not just as an artist, but an individual who dared to face his past and craft a new narrative, one that celebrated vulnerability as its cornerstone. As the venue buzzed around him and memories of his struggles drifted to the surface, Charlie couldn't help but smile. With each brushstroke, he had conquered a fragment of his identity that once felt lost. He was ready to continue unraveling more of himself fearlessly and boldly. Charlie turned away from the crowd, satisfied. This was his triumph. His life was no longer a silent mural in the shadows, it was a canvas filled with vibrant hues of growth and evolution. This was the moment he would not only cherish but also build upon, expanding artistically and personally. A realization settled in: the artist was not just within him, the artist was now the very essence of him. As he left the gallery, stepping into the fresh night, he felt renewed and empowered. The world lay open before him, each path gleaming with possibilities. This was just the beginning, and he was ready to embrace it all. Now is the time for you to embrace your journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Your support matters. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to show your support to keep these powerful stories coming. Don't wait even one more second.